In this video I'm going to be looking at this. This is a Lumix 14 to 140mm f3.5 to 5.6 super zoom. Is this possibly the most complete lens you'll ever need for travel photography? Find out. Roll credits. Hi, Brian James, I'm Micro Four Thirds guy with you once again, and I'm here with you this time to let you see this. This is my newest little acquisition. This is the Lumix 14 to 140mm f3.5 to 5.6 Mark 1 lens. I'll come back to that in a minute because it gets a bit confusing, but this is the Mark 1 version of the 14 to 140 f3.5 to 5.6, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a review on this. Is this the ultimate super zoom? Is this the only lens you're going to need on holiday? Let's have a look and find out. Let's start with the specs first, shall we? First of all, of course, we've got to look at the lens itself. It's just about the same size, a little bit heavier, but the same size either wound in or fully zoomed as the 12 to 60. Now remember, I did my 5 favourite lenses a couple of weeks ago, and in there I got my two joint top lenses. Was my 17mm f1.8 Olympus Prime and also my Lumix 12 to 60. Now this is causing me a few problems on this because I think this is just not the 12 to 60 off its perch. Obviously at the bottom end this has got 2mm less in the wide angle, and that does make quite a noticeable difference. But what you're getting by going beyond the 60 up to 140mm, then remember that's 280mm full frame equivalents. That's given me a huge reach, which I just don't have with a 60mm. And of course, it's no slower at the far end at 5.6 than the 60mm is at its far end. In fact, at 60mm, this is a faster lens than the 12 to 60. Because it hasn't reached its maximum at that point. So this really is a usable lens for me. And it's fully open at 14mm. I've got f3.5. That's given me a very big competition for that 12 to 60. And I think, although I just put that video out a couple of weeks ago, I think the king has lost its crown and has been knocked off its throne. I think this could be the new king for my usable lenses. But let's have a look at some of the specs first. Well, as I say, the focal length is 14 to 140 on Micro Four Thirds. That's an equivalent focal length if you had it on full frame because of the crop factor of a 28 to 280. So it's a huge range from a very wide angle up to quite a serious telephoto lens. Maximum aperture is f3.5 at the 14mm to 5.6 at the 140mm. Minimum aperture on this across the board is f22. Diaphragm, it has 7 blades and there are circular blades on this. Lens construction, it's got 14 lenses in 12 groups. 3 are spherical and 2 of them are the extra low dispersion lenses, the ED lenses. Front element doesn't rotate, so if we are using filters on the front, want to zoom in and out, the front element doesn't rotate, it keeps in line, which means that you're not messing about with filters on that one. Focus distances, on the between 14 and 21mm, it focuses down to 0.3 of a metre, which is 0.98 foot, so just under a foot. Once you get to 22mm to the 140mm though, your minimum distance has gone up to half a metre at 1.64 feet. But still, half a metre is very close for a lens zoomed in as far as that. And it almost gives you the ability to get almost macro shots out of this on the zoomed in end. So it's really useful on that. The filter size is great. It's a 58mm filter. I have problems with Micro Four Thirds lens which get too big. This one's 58mm. It's still a really usable size if you're fitting filter packs on. If you're using individual filters, it's a common size, and it's really about as big as you want to go Micro Four Thirds to keep the advantage of the system. Insofar as size and weight, well, let's have a look at the figures on that one. Size wise, it is 75mm by 67mm. That's 2.95 inches by 2.64 inches. And its weight is only 265 grams, which is 9.35 ounces. So 265 grams, it's light, it's small, it's tiny, and the quality is fantastic on that one. It has built-in power OIS, so it's got built-in image stabilization, which is switchable on the lens as well. Now I said that was a difference between these lenses. This is the Mark 1, but it's not the first 14 to 140 that Lumix brought out. They brought a previous version out. And that previous version, if you've seen my 7-14, has a really nice sort of grey colour. I like that. It was a matte grey colour with gold writing on it. That was a neat little lens to me, looks-wise. That was superseded by this, and it is a totally different lens. It's smaller, it's lighter, and it's slightly better quality as well, image quality as well. The graphics on this one, this is the Mark 1 of the f3.5-5.6, because the first 14-140 was an f4 to f5.8. So it wasn't quite as fast a lens. So when I'm talking about the Mark 1, I'm talking about the second 14-140 they brought out, which has got this black, shiny black trim with the gold lettering. The Mark 2 version of this is basically the same lens as this. There's very few differences. As happened with Lumix when they brought all the Mark 2 versions out, they didn't do a great deal of upgrades on them. But what they did is they put some weather sealing on and a little bit of changing on the coating. But it's mainly the weather sealing and the lens coating on there. And that went to the matte black around there with the white writing for the lens sizes. Small differences, but noticeable ones. If you're already using the original 14-140 f4 to 5.8, I wouldn't necessarily dash out and buy one of these to replace it. The quality in yours is totally usable. There is an increase in quality on this, especially across the board, but it's whether it's worth buying a new one or not. So I'll take you through some of my thoughts on that in a moment. Price-wise, they're about £700 UK to buy, about $700 US, and it's quite an expensive lens for what it is. However, this will replace an awful lot. It's going to do a fantastic job of replacing the kit lens that you got straight away. But it's also going to replace some of the other lenses in your range. And if you take into account that this is $700, £700, if you were to replace this with the lenses which would make it this focal length, you'd probably be spending a lot more on it to get an equivalent. So if you take that into account, it's not that expensive overall. It's not a drop in the ocean, no. However, as you know on this channel, I like to go for good quality used equipment. And I've been onto MPB, as I've said in the past, I use MPB as a good reference guide. I'm not necessarily saying that you should go to them. They're not being promoted by them, but I use those as a really good reference guide for prices. And the prices for these, for the Mark 1s, a good quality Mark 1 is about £290 UK. If you go for an excellent quality Mark 1, it's about £320. If you go for the Mark II version, a good quality one is about about 370, 380, I beg your pardon, £380. So to get the weather sealing and the slightly different coating, you're paying an extra £90 on top. Personally, I'm not worried about the weather sealing because the sort of shooting that I do, I don't push the camera into the weather. So for me, it's worth going for the cheaper one. If you need the weather sealing, it's about £90 more. On the excellent side, on the Mark II, you're going to be paying about $420, which is a straight £100 more than the $320 of an excellent one of the Mark 1. I didn't say anything above excellent on the Mark 1s, but they did have a like new in stock, and that was about $440. And I'm guessing a like new in the Mark 1s would probably be somewhere around about $330 to $340. So again, £100 to £110 difference. It is a noticeable amount. It's quarter the price of the lens, if you like, on that, or more than quarter the price of the lens. But if weather sealing is important to you, get the Mark II. If it's not, and you just bother about image quality, you're going to see no difference in the image quality in reality between the Mark 1 and Mark II. You take the choice. One thing between the earlier one and this one, the earlier lens, the f4 to f5.8, had the Mega OIS on. This one, as I say, has a Power OIS, which is the improved in-lens stabilization. So if you're using this on an earlier Lumix camera which doesn't have image stabilization built in, the on-lens stabilization will give you a couple of good stops of image stabilization. It is noticeable on that. If you're using it on the later Lumix cameras which have in-body stabilization built in, you should be able to get them to talk to each other. But if you remember when I did my review of my 14mm f2.5, when I was using it on my GX8, it didn't match up when I was doing video work. It didn't take the full dual IS between the lens and the camera working in unison. This is the same. When I first got this, it was on version 1.0 of the firmware. And when I put it on, it worked perfectly on my G9, but it didn't work so well on the GX8. And that was a little bit of a disappointment. However, I've done the firmware updates. The firmware is available on the Lumix site. There's actually a link underneath this to the Lumix and the Olympus sites for their firmware. So if you go on to that link below to get the firmware, the current version of the firmware at the time of doing this video is version 1.2, and I can't really see that changing. But by going up through the firmware, it takes us to Power OIS 2 level. Now the version 2 lens does have Power OIS 2. This one's Power OIS 1. However, by doing the firmware update, it takes it the same as the Power OIS 2, and that means that it works fully integrated with all of the Lumix in-body stabilization cameras to get dual IS. So it is a really well worth upgrade and totally free. So what about the lens in use? What do I find about it? Well, at the extremes, the image does tend to get a little bit softer to 14 and 140. Nothing to really be worried about. It's not a really drastic amount of softness, but in comparison to the rest of the lens, it is a little bit softer. Having said that, the rest of the lens, the rest of that focal length, when you get away from the extremes of the zoom, really does come in, and for the price of the lens, it's absolutely superb. It'll beat any of the kit lens. In fact, when you stop this lens down to f8, it's one of the best zoom lenses I've come across, and that's across the whole of the Micro Four Thirds lens ranges. That even encroaches onto some of the pro level lenses. So if you're using some of the pro level lenses, you're not a great deal difference on the sharpness of this. Don't put this down because it's classed as a budget lens or a very wide, a very extreme sort of focal length. It will give you some fantastic results if you wanted to, and it's fast enough in normal shooting with the 3.5 to 5.6 where you're going to get the majority of your shots. As I say, it's small, it's lightweight, and the quality is fantastic. And as I say, if you do knock the aperture down a little bit, you're going to get some really good results. So who's this one aimed for? Well, I think that this is ideal for people who are traveling and doing day-to-day shots. It's going to easily replace, without any real weight or size impairment, your kit lens. So this becomes your new kit lens. But even better than that, when you're traveling, I tend to travel around a lot now. I've given up doing pro work. If I was using this if I was going to do pro shoots or something, I probably wouldn't use this lens. I've got enough prime lenses and pro quality zoom lenses that I'll use those for my normal pro shooting. If I'm going to do something where somebody's paying me money for it, that's what I'll use it for. For my normal recreational shooting, when I'm taking it away in the caravan, when I'm taking it away on flights to abroad, I'm really looking for a couple of things on that. I want quality, yes. I can't give up on quality. So I need good quality equipment. But I also need something to be light and to be small. So my standard travel kit is, and I guess I'm probably going to be taking something like the 7 to 14, which is, it's not the smallest and lightest lenses, but it does, for its class, it's really good. Then the 14 to 140 that I'm looking at here. And I really don't need a longer lens, but I will take a third lens, and that's either my f1.8 17mm Olympus or my 25mm f1.7 Lumix. They're both small, neat, throw them in the bag. And those three lenses combined with a lightweight body such as the GX8, and if you are using this, the beauty is you're not changing lenses all the time. You're going from a really wide angle up to quite a considerable zoom without having to change lenses. It's only when I want to get into the extreme wide angles by putting the other lens on, or if I'm using something where I need a real low light shot and I want a very open aperture, that's when I'll put the prime on. But apart from that, this is probably going to be on the camera 99% of the time. So as a travel zoom and as a normal day-to-day use zoom, I think this is going to be perfect. Now don't forget, if you are watching this and you're enjoying it, hit the subscribe button below and also hit the little bell and tick the all beside it. That'll give you notifications every time I upload a video. And don't forget to give me a big thumbs up just below. That's going to get YouTube's algorithms to spread this around to more and more people to see. And finally, if you have enjoyed it, give me a bit of support on the channel. Buy me a coffee. There's a PayPal link below. All your donations are really appreciated. And thanks to all those who have up to now. Now the final thing I will kick onto on this lens though, the bit I don't like about this is the flare. It is a little bit susceptible to lens flare. Now one thing it is good, it does come with a lens hood, it comes with lens caps, and it comes with a nice carrying pouch if you get it new. Buying second hand they might not be there, so check if you can to see if there's a deal where you can get those included. But basically it came with a lens hood, and my advice would be to use the lens hood. I tend to use a lens hood anyway on lenses, but what I have noticed, it's a little bit susceptible to when you're getting a little bit of side light onto the lens, that you can get some flare and some popping and some of the highlights. I did try taking some photographs almost into the sun at a church that I was shooting earlier on today, and I did find that in direct sunlight it does just obliterate it. But there again, that's going to happen on almost all lenses. Insofar as this compared to most of the other zooms I've used, including the 12 to 60, it's no worse than any of the others. It is worth knowing it's there. The good thing is that the profiles in the cameras, in both the Olympus and the Lumix, This is a lens which has been on the market for a long time now, and the profiles are all in there so long as you've done your firmware updates, and that will take into account any aberrations, any distortions, and an awful lot of the flare as well is taken out in the profile. So if you're doing that, the camera's going to take care of an awful lot of it. So in summary, what do I think of this lens? It's going to be my new go-to lens for my day-to-day shooting. I wouldn't use it, as I say, on a professional shoot. No offense to that, but that's why I've got my professional lenses to use. They give me a bit more speed, they give me a little bit more quality. I tend to shoot primes for those more than anything else as well, so the primes will come to the fore. Does it mean this is a bad lens because I wouldn't use it for that? No. And in fact, if I did have a job where I was really stuck, I wouldn't think twice about using it. It would do perfectly well, but it's not what I tend to use for pro. But since I don't shoot pro very much now because I've shut the business down, the majority of my work is recreational and enjoyment and travel, and this is just perfect for it. So would I recommend buying it? Yeah. If you can push the extra 100 and you need weather sealing, go for that. If you don't need weather sealing though, don't be put off. Go for the Mark 1 version, but make sure you go for the f3.5 to 5.6 version. Don't go for the f4 to f5.8. It's too old hat. It will work well, but it's too old hat on this one. So go for this, and as I say, you can pick them up for around about the £300 mark, and you won't regret buying it, I'm sure. So I'm going to leave you some photographs at the end, which I've just taken the last couple of days. Nothing special, just test shots. But you'll find on some that there's 3 shots, and what I've tried to do now is do it at 14, 60, and 140. Now the 60mm would be the extreme of where I could get to on my 12 to 60. So have a look and see what you think of those. They will just give you a rough idea of what the lens is capable of. Obviously you're not going to see the big quality when it comes to YouTube. It's going to give you an idea on the focal lengths on that. Most of them shot around about f5.6, f8, somewhere around about there. I don't worry too much on these. They're just general shots to give you an idea of what the range of the lens is. So until the next time, this is Brian James at Micro Four Thirds Guy saying keep on taking your camera out, keep on enjoying your photography, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.